In the January 13th, 1973 edition of Billboard magazine, this advert appeared. It was talking about the Velvet Underground touring the United States later in the year. The next month, Polydor Records finally released the Velvet Underground's fifth and final studio album, appropriately titled Squeeze. Doug Yule and Steve Sesnick met for the final time when the album was released. He came by to give him 6 copies of the brand new album as compensation for recording Squeeze. He also learned that Sesnick forged his name and took the money he was supposed to receive from ASCAP and BMI when Squeeze was released. Yule found about this years later when he was with the band American Flyer. Sesnick also took an advance of $500 under his name. Squeeze was released in the United Kingdom, France, Japan, Germany, and Spain in 1973 and 1974. The album featured 11 tracks and it clocks in at over 33 minutes. The album was credited to as being produced by The Velvets. A lot of fans and music critics think that the title of the album was one final dig at Steve Sesnick, who released this Doug Yule solo album as a Velvet Underground one, as him attempting to squeeze a few more bucks out of the band. The album, however, didn't set the record charts on fire as it failed to enter the 200 list. Critics panned the album, but for some reason, the album was reissued several times in Europe throughout the 70s. But Lou Reed's lawyers put an end to that along with any kind of North American release because Polydor didn't have the rights to the Western Hemisphere to release a Velvet Underground album. So die-hard Velvet Underground fans who didn't drink the Lou Reed Flavor Aid and panned the album without even hearing a single track from it would have to wait until the 21st century to hear it officially in the United States. So whatever happened to the tour that was promised in January? Well, the rights to the Velvet Underground name were in limbo due to Steve Sesnick abandoning it and Lou Reed trying to get the rights to his own creation back. According to Doug Yule, he, along with his brother Billy, guitarist Don Silverman, and bassist George Kay, were in a covers band playing some dates in New England when their tour manager insisted on calling them the Velvet Underground. They played 2 shows at a small club near Fenway Park in Boston called Oliver's on May 25th and the 27th. The Boston Herald announced these shows as the return of the Velvet Underground to Boston. The group formed years ago under the aegis of Andy Warhol is on stage at Oliver's, still churning out the bizarre brand of rock. Velvet Underground stays at the Brookline Avenue location through Sunday. A friend of the group, Rob Norris, said this about the final version of the band. I found one last version of the Velvet Underground about to perform in Boston without Steve Sesnick's consent. This version had Doug Yule on vocals and lead guitar, Billy Yule on drums, and George on bass with a friend of George's from California named Don on rhythm guitar. They played one weekend at a small club in Boston, a small but appreciative audience, unveiling even newer material. Doug Yule said about his last shows as the Velvet Underground, there was a cover band in 1973. Me and my brother and 2 guys were doing rock and roll tunes, both the Velvet Underground and non-Velvet Underground, and some originals. We met somebody who started booking us around New England. He was supposed to bill us as featuring me from the Velvet Underground, but he wasn't supposed to say it was the Velvet Underground. We played next to Fenway Park in Kenmore Square, probably our second to last show. The place turned out to be a real dive. It was one of those places you can hear, "Can you turn it down? Can you play Louie Louie?" We didn't even play the second night. The guy just asked us to leave. But the band played 3 shows in Long Island at my father's place in Roslyn. After those gigs, the Velvet Underground was officially finished. The band that started out touring to promote the Loaded album back in the fall of 1970 with the lineup of Morrison, Powers, Yule, and Tucker was probably the best version of the band after Lou Reed left because they still retained some of that old flavor. The lineup that toured Europe in 1971 didn't even want to call themselves the Velvet Underground, but Steve Sesnick and Maureen Tucker insisted on retaining the name, probably because nobody wanted to pay good money to see the Glass Menagerie. The 1972 UK tour was just a sleazy cash grab by the band's manager Steve Sesnick, but the bootlegged copy of one of their live shows exhibited the lineup of George Kay, Mark Nosif, Rob Norris, and Doug Yule sonically delivering the goods in a wild and energetic performance. The bootlegged recording of the Velvet Underground's last show in Boston in 1973 showcased a band that sounds like a livelier version of the music that you hear from the album Squeeze, a laid-back rock and country blues influenced band. And their lasting legacy, the band's fifth and final studio album Squeeze. Yes, it does sound like a more pop-sounding Loaded, but that is what the band's sound was going to eventually evolve into. It's a pleasant-sounding album that is like a part 2 to Loaded, but with less deeper lyrics. Remember, this was recorded by one dude who only had half of the songs already written and had to rely on a sleazy rock and roll manager for some ideas. I felt that it was important to document this final chapter of the Velvet Underground because it has been forgotten by most fans and shunned by others who know little or nothing about it after Lou Reed left the band he helped create. As for Steve Sesnick, the manager who paid the band members peanuts while he pocketed the rest of the money. Yes, he was a shady grifter, but he also found places for the band to stay and play during their heyday. He would use the same sleazy tricks on rock promoters and hotel managers when he got the Velvet Underground on the road, but by the end, he was all out of tricks and pulled one final desperate act of greed upon the band back in England, which would prove to be the final death knell of the Velvet Underground. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Cuppy's Music Curios. My name is Cuppy, and I hope to see you soon. Cheerio!